In Apple's recent earnings call, India was mentioned 20 times by Cook and his deputies. In the first quarter of 2023, Apple's revenue in the Americas, Japan, and Greater China will all decline. India is a rare bright spot, which makes Cook feel that India is the next China. He even admitted that Apple's supply chain is moving out of China at an accelerated rate, and India will become the main market and production base. But for this decision, Buffett has only 4 words: very stupid. The first Indian Apple foundry withdrew. It is not only Buffett who poured cold water on Cook's made in India, but also his own people in the camp. Withdrew, one of Apple's 3 major foundries, has been doing business in India for more than 15 years. In September last year, it was reported that Tata Group, a leading Indian company, was negotiating with Withdrew. In November, it was reported that Tata hoped to acquire Withdrew at a price of up to Rs. the only manufacturing plant in India. Today, according to India Business Online, Withdrew plans to completely withdraw from the Indian market, and proposes to the Indian National Company Court and the company registry to dissolve its business in India within 1 year. Withdrew was once the vanguard of Apple's entry into India. Around 2016, Apple began to transfer its production line to India. Withdrew responded positively and became the first Apple OEM in India. In February 2017, Withdrew's manufacturing center in Bangalore was fully put into production. The factory has 8 production lines to produce iPhone 14 and iPhone 12, with over 10,000 employees at peak times. From 2017 to 2020, Withdrew has been buying land and building factories in India to expand its scale. In Withdrew's plan, in the future, it will not only manufacture smartphones for Apple, but also transfer some personal computers, Internet of Things, medical, and cloud services to India. But Withdrew gradually found that it was too difficult to make money in India. On the one hand, Apple is very strict about the profit of the foundry, and Withdrew is in a weak position and has little bargaining power. On the other hand, India's labor management is difficult, import tariffs are high, and the business environment is not ideal. In the 6 to 7 years after the establishment of the factory, the Indian factory accounted for only 3%-4% of Withdrew's revenue, and it has been losing money. The factories in Vietnam and Mexico are obviously much better. When it is uncertain whether to stay or not, the labor conflict that broke out on December 12, 2020 strengthened Withdrew's determination to leave. That night, about 2,000 employees smashed the office facilities, furniture, assembly machines, etc. in the Withdrew factory after finishing the night shift, and burned 2 off-road vehicles. In order to calm the situation, the local police detained nearly 100 people. Already in a mess, Withdrew was bombarded by public opinion and pointed out as a sweatshop. This violence is a direct result of the brutal exploitation of workers and the sweatshop-like conditions created by a company that makes the most expensive mobile phones, said Hari Gwyn, General Secretary of the All India Trade Union Congress. The government where the factory is located issued a report stating that Withdrew's Indian factory violated labor laws, including but not limited to irregular working hours, poor working conditions, and wage cuts. Subsequently, Apple's announcement also criticized Withdrew, and even said, if you can make an OEM, you can replace it, and if you can't, you can replace it. At that time, Lin Xianming, the helm of Withdrew, received the greatest advice: the most important thing in the manufacturing industry is patience, and only those who can endure will win. But now, Lin Xianming couldn't take it anymore. Faced with pressure from all sides, Withdrew chose to admit defeat. Withdrew issued an apology, fired its vice president in charge of India operations and said it would change its labor policies. The violent incident caused Withdrew to lose a total of 4.377 billion Indian rupees, about $59.51 million US, but in the end it could only pay for itself. Since then, Withdrew's enthusiasm for India has plummeted until it announced its withdrawal. As for the reason, Withdrew gave its own statement: India's business environment is not suitable for the company's normal operations, and the local law and order is not good, and the factory is easy to become the target of criminals. Can't afford to provoke, can afford to hide. Probably this is Withdrew's inner lines. As one of the first successful projects that Modi promoted the development of the manufacturing industry, Withdrew's reason for exiting can be said to have slapped Made in India in the face. In India, Withdrew has many difficult brothers and sisters. Graveyard of multinational enterprises. Former US President Trump has a soft spot for Harley motorcycles, believing that the latter is a symbol of America and a model of manufacturing. In order to get India to reduce tariffs on Harley motorcycles, Trump even went off in person to put pressure on India. I called Modi and told him this is unacceptable. He cut the tariffs by 50% in just one call. Trump is very proud. However, Harley motorcycles did not give Trump a boost. India is the largest market for motorcycles in the world. Here, motorcycles have been ridden to new heights by Indian people. As early as 2009, Harley entered the Indian market and started building a factory in Haryana in 2011. Since then, the Dyna production line was assembled in 2012, the Softail production line was assembled in 2013, and Harley started producing Street 750/500 motorcycles in India in 2014. But in the face of the Indian market, the century-old Harley also failed miserably. From 2009 to 2020, for more than 10 years, the cumulative sales of Harley motorcycles in India were only about 25,000, with an average annual sales of less than 3,000. After more than 10 years of intensive cultivation, this situation turned out to be an unacceptable failure for Harley motorcycles. In 2020, when Withdrew's factory was smashed, Harley, which was also unprofitable, officially announced its withdrawal from the Indian market. A year after Harley pulled out of India, Ford announced it would close its manufacturing operations in Sanand, Gujarat state in western India, and the southern city of Chennai. In the past 10 years, Ford's car manufacturing business in India has accumulated losses of more than $2 billion. As early as 2019, Ford Motor had reached an agreement with Indian rival Mahindra, planning to transfer most of its business to a new joint venture company, which will be managed by Mahindra. However, due to various factors such as the epidemic, the plan was declared broken at the end of 2020. Also, as a representative of the US auto industry, GM woke up much earlier in 2017. GM announced that it would stop selling cars in the Indian market. In January 2020, General Motors and Great Wall Motors of China reached an agreement that Great Wall Motors will take over the operation of GM's plant in Maharashtra. Compared with the fact that American car companies cannot make money in India, Chinese mobile phone manufacturers may be even worse. India makes money and spends it in India, and they want to take it home. In January 2022, the Indian Tax Intelligence Agency, DRI, punished Xiaomi India for paying an additional tax of 6.53 billion rupees, about 558 million yuan, on the grounds of tax evasion and fraudulent accounting. After Xiaomi entered the Indian market, the year with the highest profit was only 350 million yuan. This is not over yet, a bigger thunder followed. In May 2022, India went into a frenzy again, seizing $725 million, approximately RMB 4.8 billion, of assets belonging to Xiaomi Technology India Private Limited on the grounds of foreign exchange remittance violations. At present, Xiaomi India's petition for the return of frozen assets has been rejected by the Delhi High Court. Although Xiaomi India stated that it will continue to deal with the matter in accordance with legal procedures, the probability of doing nothing for 10 years in the end is very high. The experience of Xiaomi is just a microcosm of the nightmare of Chinese mobile phone manufacturers. Vivo followed closely and was investigated for alleged money laundering. 119 bank accounts of Vivo India were frozen, involving funds of about 386 million yuan. Although the account freeze was lifted under Vivo's argument, it has to pay a guarantee of about $119 million to the Indian government. At the same time, it has a fixed fund of more than 2.5 billion rupees in its account. After some tossing, Vivo has worked for nothing in India for 2 years. On July 13, 2022, the Ministry of Finance of India issued a statement stating that the Indian Tax Intelligence Agency, DRI, found during the investigation that Oppo India was suspected of evading tariffs of 43.9 billion rupees, about 3.7 billion yuan, and has issued a notice to Oppo India, claiming tax recovery. Faced with this situation, Glory panicked. A few days later, on July 22, Honor CEO Zhao Ming stated that the Honor team had withdrawn from India due to well-known reasons. Fortunately, he ran fast, and Glory escaped unharmed. This practice of repairing enterprises with administrative means such as paying taxes is not only aimed at China, but all foreign enterprises. In 2005, POSCO, a South Korean steel manufacturer, planned to invest $12 billion in the construction of a large-scale steel plant. However, under various operations in India, POSCO's initial investment of several billion dollars was eventually wiped out. In 2008, Shanghai Electric's 8.8 billion yuan payment for goods could not be recovered, and instead it was claimed 2.1 billion yuan. In 2009, IBM was required to pay back taxes of 5.357 billion rupees, about $866 million to India. In 2013, the Indian government demanded $360 million in back taxes from Nokia's Indian branch, which led to Nokia closing its Indian factory. In 2014, Samsung was fined $200 million in taxes in India. 10 years later, Samsung was targeted again. In January 2023, the Department of Revenue Intelligence, DRI, of India accused Samsung of misclassifying long-range radio heads in an attempt to circumvent import duties of 17.28 billion rupees, about $212 million. Regardless of whether you are from Europe, America, Japan, South Korea, or China, as long as you go to India, you must be prepared to be repaired in addition to normal business operations. From 2014 to 2021, a total of 2,783 multinational companies in India have closed their companies or offices, accounting for 1/6 of the 12,000 foreign companies in India. The embarrassment of foreign-funded enterprises has also given India a resounding title: the cemetery of multinational enterprises. Modi's ambition, India's reality. In the early morning of December 1984, a cyanide leak occurred in a pesticide factory in Bhopal, the capital of Madhya Pradesh, India, and the Bhopal chemical leakage incident that shocked the world broke out. This is one of the largest accidents in the history of human industry, directly resulting in the death of 3,150 people, more than 50,000 people were blinded, more than 20,000 people were seriously poisoned, and nearly 80,000 people were permanently disabled. The chief culprit of the incident was the Union Carbide Group of the United States, which came to India to invest and build a factory. Afterwards, Union Carbide only paid $470 million in compensation, which was regarded as a humiliation by the Indians. India has long been in a forced state of reluctance to attract foreign companies to invest in and build factories. In 1973, India passed the Foreign Exchange Control Act, which stipulated that the proportion of foreign capital holdings should not exceed 40%, driving away dozens of multinational companies such as IBM in one go. However, in order to develop the economy, especially the manufacturing industry, India has to rely on foreign capital. This kind of twisting ideology makes India's treatment of multinational companies ups and downs and unpredictable. In 2014, Modi, who had been in office for less than half a year, announced a new strategy with great ambition: Make in India. This strategy differs from Made in India only in tense. What he pays more attention to is the investment and production of multinational companies in India, rather than export. Make in India has three main goals. First, the average annual output value of the manufacturing industry will grow by 12% to 14%. Second, by 2022, add 100 million manufacturing jobs. The contribution rate of gross domestic product, GDP, reached 25%. But things backfired, and the reality was far from Modi's goal. According to World Bank data, from 2014 to 2021, the annual growth rate of India's manufacturing industry exceeded 12% only in 2015, and was lower than 10% in other years. Manufacturing accounted for 16% of GDP in 2015, and has since declined to only 14% in 2021. During the same period, China's manufacturing industry accounted for 27.4% of GDP. In order to promote Made in India, the Modi government has promoted and relaxed many investment restrictions. In many people's minds, India has a large demographic dividend, deep market potential, low cost, and a relatively relaxed investment and business environment, and the manufacturing industry should have great potential. Ideal is full, the reality is very skinny. According to Liu Xiaodong, Secretary General of the China Chamber of Commerce in India, about 10 years ago, the Indian government invited Chinese companies to invest in India and took the initiative to streamline regulations and approval procedures. Since then, more than 1,000 Chinese-funded enterprises have come to India in the fields of home appliances, mobile phones, construction machinery, automobiles, communications, building materials, and new energy. However, when they came to India, they gradually discovered that it is not easy to develop manufacturing here. The development of manufacturing industry requires the cooperation of software and hardware facilities, but India is not satisfactory in various aspects such as infrastructure, logistics, land acquisition, and factory construction, labor quality, laws and regulations. Take electricity for example. The entire national power system is full of complicated power plant ownership, distorted coal price system and serious environmental pollution. It is difficult for the manufacturing industry to obtain stable and cheap power supply. For example, logistics, in India's railway transportation system, is still in the pre-modern state of multi-track coexistence, with various gauges and low efficiency. Another example is land acquisition for building factories. India implements private ownership of land, and the process of purchasing land is cumbersome. Some landowners raise prices year by year, and the rental cost increases accordingly. In terms of the huge demographic dividend that has attracted the most attention, manufacturing in India actually does not take much advantage. Taking the literacy rate as an example, the literacy rate of the population aged 15 and over in India is 74%. The total population of this part is about 1.04 billion, and the number of illiterate people is about 270 million, accounting for 40% of the total illiterate population in the world. In order to improve the quality of workers, the Modi government has amended the Indian labor law, stipulating that all foreign capital must train Indian workers, but the implementation is not satisfactory. Indian labor laws are complex and strict. Wistron's encounter in December 2020 shows that when the factory was smashed, looted, and burned, the company is likely to be dumb and eat cactus. In fact, the above factors can still be overcome for the development of the manufacturing industry. India's pitfalls in taxation and policy uncertainty are really hard to guard against. Indians themselves say that the complexity of Indian tax laws is probably the number one in the world. A senior person from a Chinese-funded enterprise in India once lamented, "There are IBM, Nokia, and Samsung far away, and there are Xiaomi, Vivo, and Oppo nearby. There are countless foreign companies that have stumbled on tax-related issues." In terms of policies, in the initial stage of attracting foreign investment, India often offers some preferential conditions. Once the company lands, an upward adjustment strategy will follow. This kind of routine of inviting the king into the urn in the early stage, and then using tariffs to cut foreign profits and protect national industries in the middle and late stages, is difficult to retain foreign-funded manufacturing industries for long-term cultivation. Recently, the international rating agency Standard & Poor's pointed out in a report that India has a problem of high uncertainty in economic reform policies. Due to the complex relationship between the central and local governments in India, domestic trade unions are dissatisfied with the relevant policies to encourage large manufacturing enterprises and other factors, resulting in inefficient implementation of relevant policies to promote the development of manufacturing in India. European and American companies that entered India earlier have learned to suffer and gain wisdom. They choose to stay away from industries such as manufacturing, which require heavy asset investment, low profits, and long-term intensive cultivation. Enterprises represented by Ford, General Motors, and Harley have withdrawn one after another. In recent years, U.S. capitals such as Google, Amazon, and KKR have invested more than $20 billion in India, but most of them are concentrated in the internet field. Ernst & Young's report also shows that Indian unicorn companies are concentrated in the internet field, and financial innovation accounts for the highest proportion, followed by e-commerce and education innovation, all of which are the extension of the advantages of India's service industry. In India, the service industry accounts for more than 50% of GDP for a long time, which is comparable to that of developed countries. There is really no need for foreign companies to invest in the manufacturing industry and bet on an uncertain future. With the withdrawal of Wistron, friends who are trying to take root in the Indian manufacturing industry seem to have to think about it seriously.